Hitler and the Nazis' Third Reich has always been a point of discussion among the UFO researchers and experts for their advanced technology. There are lots of stories about the Third Reich which connected to the UFOs. There is no official record that highlights the Third Reich's advancement in the technology of flying saucers or any base in Antarctica. Well, no government wants to talk about aliens, UFOs, and E.T.s even if they exist because of the possibility of mass chaos. Among all these exciting stories about the Nazi Reich, the least discussed is about a woman named Maria Orsic. She was allegedly said to be in contact with otherworldly beings to obtain advanced technology for the creation of flying saucers. Famous British historian Nicholas Goodrick-Clarke wrote a whole chapter about Maria Orsic in his book Black Sun, published in 2001. During World War II, Germany had a strong desire to dominate its opponents, whether through technology, weapons, or intelligence. Then, a young beautiful woman named Maria Orsic came forward and wanted to help Nazis in building flying saucers. She said that she could communicate with extraterrestrials. In 2010, the German magazine PM sparked everyone with the exciting report, covered by the Telegraph, which apparently claimed that there is strong evidence that a Nazi UFO program was well advanced. Deep research was conducted by multiple authors who later put forward an interesting explanation that everything began after the involvement of Maria Orsic. From a very early age, she had an interest in political movements. She was born to a Croatian man in the Austrian capital city of Vienna, and her mother was Austrian. The Vril society, also known as vrilerinnen, had a peculiar way of identifying themselves. They would wear their hair down in public rather than in a ponytail to avoid attracting attention. The members carried a disc that represented two important figures in the group, Maria Orsic and Sigrun. Nicholas Clarke discussed the secret Vril society in his book and connected it with Orsic. Back in 1919, she moved to Germany where she joined the Thule Society, a German occultist and folkish group founded after World War I. She was acquainted with other women who had the same powers as her. They all were known as medium for their unique power to communicate with extraterrestrials and other things. All these women had a common feature: beautiful long hair. The society allegedly taught concentration exercises designed to awaken vril energy, strongest in women with long hair that fed magnetic energy from the earth to the brain. They believed that their long hair acted as cosmic antennae to receive alien communication from beyond. According to them, long hair acted as antennae for receiving information from the universe. Later, Orsic founded her society known as the Vril after she communicated with aliens who had lived during the time of Sumerians. These beings left Earth and went to the Aldebaran solar system. The word vril actually came from an ancient Sumerian word vril, which means godlike. Before her first contact with aliens, Orsic fell into a coma for several hours when she saw tall creatures. After 8 days of the incidents, she started receiving information from the aliens which contained plans and information to build flying saucers. According to Orsic, she communicated with representatives of Aldebaran civilization who lived 68 light-years from Earth in the constellation Taurus. UFO researcher and ancient astronaut theorist Maximilien de Lafayette wrote a book Aldebaran vril, where he explained in detail the role of Maria Orsic and extraterrestrials from Aldebaran. In December 1919, Maria announced to her accomplices that she had received a psychic message written in a secret German Templar cipher that was unknown to her. This message contained technical information for the construction of a flying machine, which came from the star system Aldebaran, which was 68 light-years away in the constellation of Taurus. The extant records of the Vril Society do mention that these telepathic messages came from Aldebaran. Maria Orsic recorded 2 folders of papers, one in a language written in the Templar cipher, the other in an obscure language. Maria herself believed that the second folder was written in some ancient, Oriental language, which she identified as Pan-Babylonian. These messages were taken up by German scholars close to the Vril Society. They figured out that the mysterious language was actually the language of the ancient Sumerian civilization, which preceded ancient Babylon. Scientists were able to translate messages from this language and decipher the strange drawings of a round, flying machine, as per the received information, in 1922, the prototype of the flying saucer-shaped machine was made but it exploded, disintegrating in half. In the next attempt, Orsic got new information which she shared with Dr. Otto Schumann. He studied and approved this project. In 1923, another flying saucer was made, and it became successful. At the end of November 1924, Maria Orsic visited Rudolf Hess in his apartment in Munich with Rudolf von Sebetendorf, founder of the Thule Society. Sebetendorf wanted to make contact with Dietrich Eckart, who had died a year earlier. Eckart had been a member of the Thule Society until his death. In order to make contact with Eckart, Sebetendorf and other members of the Thule Society linked their hands around a table draped in black cloth. Hess fell into a nervous state as he watched Maria Orsic's eyes roll back so that only her whites were visible, seeing her in a trance-like state with her mouth open. Sebetendorf, however, only smiled contentedly as he heard Eckart's voice begin to sound through the medium. Eckart announced that he had been chosen to have his voice used by someone to convey an important message. That someone identified himself as Shumi, an inhabitant of a distant world orbiting the star Aldebaran from the constellation Taurus. The Shumi explained that they were a humanoid race that colonized Earth 500 million years ago. The ruins of ancient Larsa, Shuruppak and Nippur in Iraq were built by them. Those of them who survived the Great Flood, Noah's Ark flood, became the ancestors of the Aryan race. Sebetendorf was skeptical of these claims and asked for proof. While Mary was in a trance, she wrote several lines of strange signs. These signs were similar to the language of the ancient Sumerian civilization, the predecessor of the ancient Babylonian culture. In December 1943, a meeting was held by the Vril Society on the seashore in Kolberg, Germany. The purpose of this meeting was said to be the discussion of the Aldebaran project. According to the story, the mediums of the Vril Society claimed to receive telepathic information about habitable planets around Aldebaran and planned to travel there. In a subsequent meeting in January 1944, involving Adolf Hitler, Heinrich Himmler, Drive W. Schumann, and Kunkel of the Vril Society, it was decided to send a prototype craft, the Vril 7 Jaeger, through a dimensional channel outside the speed of light in the direction of Aldebaran. A test of this dimensional channel supposedly took place in late 1944. But it didn't go well. The Vril 7 appeared damaged and aged as if it had been flying for hundreds of years. After this, things get extremely complicated, as it is revealed that the Vril Society has been infiltrated by a paramilitary group of Schutzstaffel, SS formations, who are planning to take the ship for themselves to use for military purposes. The frightened Orsic ordered the ship to be hidden in a safe place, according to other sources, completely destroyed, and the Vril Society itself to be dissolved. After that, traces of Orsic and other Vril members simply disappear into history, leaving many reasons for gossip. According to the best-known theory, Orsic and her associates secretly boarded their ship and eventually flew off into space to the Aldebaran system. However, members of the SS managed to obtain the plans of the ship and decided to use them in their own research. It was then that the Third Reich created a secret military weapon called Die Glock, the Bell. It was a flying machine with the characteristics of modern UFOs. It is believed to have been built in 1944 in a huge underground laboratory inside the Voslov mine. Maria Orsic, a key member of the Vril Society, lost track of her in 1945. A letter attributed to her was sent to all Vril Society members on March 11, 1945, saying "Niemand bleibt hier, no one is here." This communication is believed to be the last from the Vril Society, and since then, there has been no further contact with Maria Orsic or other members. Some speculate that they fled to Aldebaran. Some historians said that the so-called Foo Fighters, or UFOs, were actually Nazi aircraft which showed their advancement in technology. One such incident was explained by space pioneer Leroy Gordon Cooper during his posting in Germany. Just before the end of World War II, Maria Orsic and her Vril Society members disappeared without any trace. Some believe that she used one of the saucers and departed to Aldebaran, while others think that they live under the Earth's surface. However, many historians argue that the alleged communication between the Vril Society and the Nazis was nothing more than a sci-fiction. Others link Maria Orsic's story with the sci-fiction novel The Coming Race, published in 1871, where author Edward Bulwer-Lytton wrote about an intelligent race of people living underworld who used an invisible force known as vril for their survival, which provided them with cosmic energy. Due to the similarities between the novel and Maria Orsic, it is difficult for people to choose between real and fiction. But famous German scientist and physicist Hermann Oberth, who is one of the founders of rocket and space science, was the supporter of the extraterrestrial hypothesis for the origin of UFOs. According to the article published by the American Weekly in 1954, Oberth stated, "It is my thesis that flying saucers are real and that they are spaceships from another solar system. I think that they possibly are manned by intelligent observers who are members of a race that may have been investigating our Earth for centuries." Die Glocke, the bell, was a purported top-secret scientific technological device, wonder weapon, or Wunderwaffe developed in the 1940s in Nazi Germany. First described by Polish journalist and author Igor Witkowski in Prawda o Wunderwaffe, 2000, it was later popularized by military journalist and author Nick Cook, who associated it with Nazi occultism, anti-gravity, and free energy suppression research. In his 2001 book The Hunt for Zero Point, author Nick Cook identified claims about Die Glocke as having originated in the 2000 Polish book Prawda o Wunderwaffe, The Truth About the Wonder Weapon, by Igor Witkowski. Cook described Witkowski's claims of a device called the Bell, engineered by Nazi scientists, that was a glowing, rotating contraption rumored to have some kind of anti-gravitational effect, be a time machine, or part of an SS anti-gravity program for a flying saucer. According to Cook, Die Glocke was bell-shaped, about 4 meters, 12 feet, high and 3 meters, 9 feet, in diameter, and incorporated 2 high-speed, counter-rotating cylinders filled with a purplish, liquid metallic-looking substance that was supposed to be highly radioactive, codenamed Cerium-525. Cook recounts claims that scientists and technicians who worked on the bell and who did not die of its effects were wiped out by the SS at the close of the war, and the device was moved to an unknown location. Cook proposed that SS official Hans Kammler later secretly traded this technology to the U.S. military in exchange for his freedom. Witkowski suggested that a concrete ring called the Henge near the Wenceslas mine built in 1943 or 1944 and vaguely resembling Stonehenge was used to tether the bell during tests. Witkowski's book was translated to English in 2003. He claimed to have discovered evidence of Die Glocke in a review of World War II-era documents that were declassified by the Polish government, which led him to additional research via archives and interviews. The first document, allegedly supplied to Witkowski by an unnamed Polish government official, was an affidavit from the war crimes trial for General Jacob Sporenberg, who supposedly confessed to ordering the murder of about 60 persons who had knowledge of the secretive project. Kurt D. Buss, Wernher von Braun and Walther Gerlach were also allegedly implicated in Die Glocke research. Witkowski claims Die Glocke was organized under a division of the Waffen-SS and operated mainly at facilities in Lower Silesia. Die Glocke was conceived in early 1942, and active experimentation began in mid-1944. Prisoners from the Gross-Rosen concentration camp were supposedly exposed to radiation from Die Glocke, resulting in many deaths and health problems. Survivors of the camp are alleged to have reported witnessing tests of Die Glocke, reporting a bright bluish light from the object. Witkowski postulated Cerium-525 was likely an irradiated form of mercury used in the creation of a form of plasma that was intended as a weapon and propulsion system, and which may have been capable of distorting spacetime. High Jump, an extraordinary 2006 Russian documentary, was recently translated into English, revealing new information about a U.S. Navy Antarctica expedition in 1946-47. Originally scheduled for a 6-month period, the scientific expedition was officially called the United States Navy Antarctic Development Program, and given the operational name High Jump. The naval component of Operation High Jump was known as Task Force 68 and comprised 4,700 military personnel, 1 aircraft carrier, the USS Philippine Sea, among the largest of all carriers of the time, and number of naval support ships and aircraft. The naval expedition was headed by famed polar explorer Admiral Richard Byrd, who had been ordered to consolidate and extend American sovereignty over the largest practical area of the Antarctic continent. Byrd's expedition ended after only 8 weeks with many fatalities according to initial news reports based on interviews with crew members who spoke to the press while passing through Chilean ports. Rather than deny the heavy casualty reports, Admiral Byrd revealed in a press interview that Task Force 68 had encountered a new enemy that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Admiral Byrd's statements were published in the Chilean press but never publicly confirmed by U.S. authorities. Indeed, Byrd did not speak again to the press about Operation High Jump, leaving it for researchers to speculate for decades over what really happened, and why Byrd was silenced. After the Soviet collapse in 1991, the KGB released previously classified files that cast light on the mysterious Byrd-led naval expedition to Antarctica. A 2006 Russian documentary, recently translated, made public for the first time a 1947 secret Soviet intelligence report commissioned by Joseph Stalin of Task 68's mission to Antarctica. The intelligence report, gathered from Soviet spies embedded in the U.S., revealed that the U.S. Navy had sent the military expedition to find and destroy a hidden Nazi base. On the way, they encountered a mysterious UFO force that attacked the military expedition, destroying several ships and a significant number of planes. Indeed, Operation High Jump had suffered many casualties as stated in initial press reports from Chile. While there is a possibility the report resulted from U.S. disinformation fed to a known Soviet mole, the more likely explanation is that the report exposes the first known historical incident involving a battle between U.S. naval forces and an unknown UFO force stationed near Antarctica. It is a historical fact that Nazi Germany devoted significant resources to the exploration of Antarctica, and established a pre-war presence there with its first mission in the Antarctic summer of 1938–1939. According to a statement by Grand Admiral Dönitz in 1943, the German submarine fleet is proud of having built for the Führer, in another part of the world, a Shangri-La land, an impregnable fortress. If the fortress was in Antarctica, was it built by the Nazis, or discovered there? After the defeat of Nazi Germany, according various sources, elite Nazi scientists and leaders escaped to this impregnable fortress by U-boats, 2 of which experienced difficulties and surrendered in Argentina. In the Soviet intelligence report, never before known testimony by 2 U.S. Navy servicemen with Operation High Jump was revealed. A recent article in New Dawn by Frank Joseph gives a detailed analysis of the 2 eyewitness accounts, only the latter of which was mentioned in the 2006 Russian documentary. John P. Shawach, a radioman stationed on the USS Brownson, gave testimony of how UFOs appeared dramatically out of the ocean depths. On January 17, 1947 at 0700 hours, Shawach said, "I and my shipmates in the pilothouse port side observed for several minutes the bright lights that ascended about 45 degrees into the sky. Very quickly we couldn't ID the lights, because our radar was limited to 250 miles in a straight line." Over the next several weeks, according to the Soviet report, the UFOs flew close over the U.S. naval flotilla, which fired on the UFOs, which did retaliate with deadly effects. According to Lieutenant John Sayerson, a flying boat pilot, the thing shot vertically out of the water at tremendous velocity, as though pursued by the devil, and flew between the masts of the ship, at such a high speed that the radio antenna oscillated back and forth in its turbulence. An aircraft Martin flying boat from the Kurituk that took off just a few moments later was struck with an unknown type of ray from the object, and almost instantly crashed into the sea near our vessel. About 10 miles away, the torpedo boat Maddox burst into flames and began to sink, having personally witnessed this attack by the object that flew out of the sea. All I can say is, it was frightening. There is a major problem with Sayerson's quote. There has been no torpedo boat named Maddox in the U.S. Navy. In the Russian documentary, the incident described by Sayerson, misspelt Sayerson, refers instead to the destroyer Murdoch. There was, however, no destroyer named Murdoch active in the U.S. fleet in 1947. Instead there was a destroyer named Maddox, DD-731, but it did not serve in Operation High Jump. In fact, the USS Maddox was the destroyer fired upon in the Gulf of Tonkin incident of 1964. According to Frank Joseph, the USS Maddox was either a torpedo boat, or torpedo-carrying destroyer. He goes on to explain what may have happened to the Maddox mentioned in the Soviet report. USS Maddox was indeed sunk by enemy action, but 5 years earlier by a German dive bomber during the Allied invasion of Sicily. Actually, there were at least 3 American destroyers known by that name: DD-168, DD-622, and DD-731, all of them contemporaneous. The U.S. Navy has long been notorious for falsifying the identity of its ships and rewriting their histories if they embarrass official policy. So too, the Maddox cited by Soviet espionage was similarly consigned to an official memory hole. If Joseph is correct, then it is very possible that a USS Maddox was destroyed during Operation High Jump, and the U.S. Navy changed official records to hide this. An alternative explanation is that the 1947 Soviet report contained U.S.-orchestrated disinformation that was being conveyed to Soviet authorities by a Soviet mole known by the U.S. intelligence community. Though plausible, this is highly unlikely given that the US and USSR were still allies at the time of Operation High Jump, and had a common interest in finding and destroying any hidden Nazi base in the South Atlantic. The destructive technology used by the UFOs in the Soviet intelligence report was not something that had been developed by the defeated Nazis who had only shortly before been forced to retreat to the South Atlantic. It appears the UFOs were not intent on destroying Task Force 68, but forcing it to turn back. Were the UFOs protecting the retreating Nazis and their own presence in Antarctica? Was the Stalin-era report disinformation deliberately fed to Soviet authorities by US intelligence? What is the most likely answer is that the Soviet-era report released in the 2006 Russian documentary was substantially correct. This suggests that Admiral Byrd's initial press report was accurate. A new enemy that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds had emerged. Most importantly, the UFO force had inflicted heavy casualties on the US Navy that was powerless to oppose it. The world's first known battle between the United States military and an unknown UFO fleet based near Antarctica very likely occurred in 1947. And the general public has never learned about it until now. Anti-gravitational ship by Nikola Tesla. Maria Orsic. The following information was taken from the book The Black Sun, The Return of the Secret Societies of Vril, M.C. Peretta. 2 Yugoslavs on both sides of the Great Atlantic Ocean kept a large number of confiscated correspondence about the construction of an anti-gravity ship. Maria and Nikola were related to the construction of an anti-gravity flying machine and contacts with extraterrestrials. Nikola was a scientist, a genius of electromagnetism, and Mary began to have continuous mediumistic experiences in which she received all the technical data and drawings for the construction of an anti-gravity flying ship, for me 2 energies that met not by chance. Both were constantly and closely watched by military and intelligence agencies. If these security agencies treated with immense secrecy the discoveries in the electromagnetic field that Tesla and Maria made, each one in their home country, the confidential treatment of their correspondence was even greater. Extremely under surveillance, and, to this day, the military perhaps hide things through strategies that not everyone is prepared for this advanced knowledge. Tesla refuted Einstein's theory of the curvature of spacetime and recognized only the existence of a force field, vril, which can explain the motions of bodies, as observed, thus again agreeing with Maria Orsic's data. Genius Nikola Tesla died poor and forgotten in New York on January 7, 1943. The scientific community did not recognize him, perhaps because of his eccentric behavior in claiming that celibacy helped him to reason better, and for attributing his genius to messages received from extraterrestrials. This is unfortunate, living in a time where they were not prepared for this technology. In ufology, conspiracy theory, science fiction, and comic book stories, claims or stories have circulated linking UFOs to Nazi Germany. The German UFO theories describe supposedly successful attempts to develop advanced aircraft or spacecraft prior to and during World War II, further asserting the post-war survival of these craft in secret underground bases in Antarctica, South America, or the United States, along with their creators.